Hello and welcome, everyone. For those of you that are attending live and those of you that are going to be listening to this live replay after, I want to give you that warm welcome and then introduce you to Kelly, who I am bringing on with me today to talk about how to create chill in your life. Obviously, if you are listening to this pod right now, you know me because you are in my group Real Life with Anxiety and Depression. And if you are not, and Kelly's going to post this link to all of her people after, I am Dr. J. I am a naturopathic doctor who focuses specifically in mental health for anxiety and depression in high achievers. And as Kelly put it nicely yesterday, and perfectionists. So high achiever perfectionists who have anxiety and depression are always going to have this different type of experience when it comes to these mental health conditions, because we do not process information the same as other people do. Okay. So if you've been floating on this planet for a long time, wondering what's wrong with you, there is nothing wrong with you. You're just a little bit more complex than a textbook would allow. And that is that. So I'm going to pass this off to you, Kelly, for a hot second, just to introduce yourself. Tell them who you are, tell them what you do, because they know who I am and what I do.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jenna and I go way back, because we were both dancers. And I have continued down my path as a freelance contemporary dancer. And I have also recently entered the realm of holistic life coaching. And I work in mostly the modality of somatics and using movement to really come back into our bodies in a safe way to reprogram the nervous system so that we can move away from some of these symptoms of anxiety and perfectionism and come back to a place of neutrality, a place of calm, a place of authenticity, where we can finally get out of some of the sympathetic fight or flight, chronic addiction to stress that our
Why did you just stutter when you said that word? Perfection is being addicted to stress? What? Don't stutter when you say that. We are addicted to stress.
And culturally, it's really sort of supported to live inside of that addiction. So as a self-proclaimed perfectionist and high-functioning, anxious human and artist, I am super passionate about all the same topics as Jenna. And this is gonna be a goodie.
Yeah, this is going to be a good
so
chat.
happy to be having this conversation.
Yeah. And we're going to start off the conversation right off the hop, because I always like to bring some warmth into these conversations and not make them so clinical. Because yeah, I'm a doctor, but I also like to be very humanistic with my people. So I do want to talk about ways that we used to be like at the beginning, like before we even start talking about this, so that people who are listening can understand what it's like to go from point A to point B. Because when I say my point A was like wretched, like I want to paint a picture for how wretched it actually was, because I think people look at me still and they go, what are you talking about? Like, you're not anxious, you're not depressed, you don't have that. How is that possible? It's like, but when you do the work, it is really possible. But I want people to understand that they're not too far in or too bad to be able to see that change, or that it's too far away for them to conceptualize that they can be different. So I want to bring in some stories. Maybe some things will pop up for me where I'll be like, oh yeah, you know, when we were in dance and we used to do that. But I just want us to give some stories and context to what a high achiever perfectionist can convince themselves is good and okay. And mentally well, because they're being productive and they feel good about themselves, versus what they're actually doing to their nervous system at the same time, that in 5 or 10 years, you're going to look at and be like, how was I doing that? Or why did I do that? Or what was allowing me to dissociate enough to think that that was okay, or that it was appropriate to do that at the time? Your face is frozen for me, but now it's back. Okay. So we'll get there. But I want to just, even before, this is like the pre-preface, is chill in your life and relaxing and resting is the most important thing that you will ever do as a human being. But it is the least prioritized thing that we do on a day-to-day basis. And that concept alone is fucking frightening. Okay. Like, how many people, if we're just starting off this conversation right now, if you're listening, if you listen to the live replay after, how many hours can you say in a day where you're like, oh, that is when I relaxed? Or that is when I put it into my schedule that I was legit going to be doing nothing whatsoever, right? So there's not a lot of importance placed into that. And if you're smirking and sitting there being like, I didn't do it today yet, right? That is exactly what I'm talking about, which is we need to be prioritizing it as much as we say, I need to eat, I need to go on a walk. I need to have my downtime at night before I go to bed, which isn't really the same thing as relaxing. Okay, getting ready for bed, guys, and having a nighttime routine isn't relaxing, right? Our body needs signals multiple times throughout the day where we're like, we're good. Instead of being like, and then it's like, okay, now I'm gonna force myself to be good now. Go the fuck to sleep, right? We can't force ourselves to do that. And I think that that was a trap that I was stuck in a long time ago. And I do want just to emphasize the importance of this before we have this conversation. Do you have anything to say about that before I even continue here?
Oh my gosh. So much to say. I mean, because it's true what you're saying. Like we don't practice it and we don't think it's something that we need to, this is a bit of an aggressive word, but enforce
Be
in our
aggressive.
lives.
Be aggressive. Be
Yeah.
aggressive. Be aggressive. Yeah, do it.
There's the answer coming up. Yeah, but we really need to enforce it. Like we enter this world as these like whole beautiful beings that are just in a state of rest, and we're in this beautiful regulated state, and then it's a learned behavior and it's a conditioned behavior as much as it's like already wired in however you came into the world. And so we're actually taught how to do it the least amount possible, and we roll into these cycles that we only rest once we're burnt out, and we think that that's rest. Like I actually remember my favorite example is that I would book a vacation only after like 4 dance contracts and like 3
I
days
deserve
off
this.
3 days off for the last 4 months. So then I'd go on my vacation and I'd be so tired, but I had to make sure I kept working out on my vacation.
We're gonna get there. Oh my God, stab me in the chest. Did we say the workout word?
And then I came home absolutely not rested, because you can't actively recover and rest if you're already in a place of burnout.
Yeah.
That's not rest.
I know.
That's
actually the recipe for a dysregulated nervous system in disguise. If you convincing yourself for 10 years that you're practicing rest, but really you're not. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Which,
and so it seems maybe silly, or maybe there's some shame around, I need to practice rest, I need to take this full day off. Hey, why are you sick? What are you doing? You're not going to go out, you're not going to social. I'm resting.
yeah. I also think that for most of the people who have anxiety and depression and are the perfectionists, like let's remove the social aspect for a second. I legitimately believe and know that people who have this mental prototype or this character trait, when they do nothing, they actually physically can't handle it, right? It's like you can't sit still, because what happens is you start to get overwhelmed with the feelings that you are suppressing constantly throughout the day, which is the anxiousness or the feeling not good enough, or the, oh, I have like a faster heart rate, or now that I'm sitting and I'm thinking about my breathing, now I realize I'm not breathing fully and I'm anxious about breathing in general. Or when you sit down, you start to think about and ruminate over all of the things that you should be doing instead of sitting. Like people really haven't understood the concept of you can't sit still and chill because you actually don't know how to cope with basic human emotions. And that is like where I get people like right at the beginning of my program to start, where they're like, I can't do this, I can't do that. I'm like, great, we're going to practice mindfulness and meditation, because now you have no choice. Because you have no choice. Like if you can't sit with yourself in your stillness, in your silence, how are you really sitting with yourself when you're busy? And how are you going to sit with yourself at all when you're actually bringing enjoyment and fun and rest and like nervous system regulation into it? You can't, because there's no foundation. And you know what they say about a cracked foundation is that building is never going to stand, unfortunately. So,
well, and it's like any new skill, right? Like you can't, if you've never run a step in your life, you're not going to run the marathon.
Right.
So
but like high achievers are like, oh yeah, 5K.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So the same way, high achiever, absolute mindset. You're like, okay, I'm going to practice rest. I'm just going to book in 2 hours in my day every day from now on. It's like, you're going to start with 1 minute and you're going to feel all
Yeah.
of the dysregulation and the maladaptive strategies, and your whole system is going to go into fight or flight,
Fight or
panic
flight.
mode. Everything.
And then you're literally double downing on the thing that you shouldn't be doing, which is I'm not supposed to be feeling this. It's supposed to be rest. But unfortunately, if you're listening and this is you right now, like you don't know how to rest, get over it. You don't know how, and you need to start relearning like you are a young child. And I wrote that note down for myself, which is we don't start learning this behavior until we're like, it's almost like 10, 14, 18. There's like these like different pockets of time where you're like, oh, I'm no longer going out for a bike ride with my friend. Or, oh, I'm no longer like, having that play date or going to do something fun during the day and I have a birthday party in the afternoon. And you're no longer doing those things. It's like, I'm studying. Or when we were in dance, it was okay. I have an extracurricular that I'm like really, really heavy into. And yeah, sure, it's like fun. And we'll talk about later the connection between when something's fun, but it's also work at the same time, because that's also a no-no for your nervous system, because you are treating and teaching your nervous system that when you do an activity that is considered fun, but it's also work at the same time, that when you go to do something for fun in isolation, then the anxiety from the work then comes and connects back there, which is just neuroplasticity working at its finest. I'm so chaotic right now with my thoughts. I'm like, bing, 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 so much to talk about. Go look at these little money pieces swaying around. This is what happens when the rest of your head's dirty, but only the money pieces stay alive. Okay. So the importance of rest, and I don't think I hammered this home well enough at the beginning, was that when you are being still and doing nothing during the day, it's not about your brain being like, good for you, you did it, congratulations on resting. There's actual signals that go from your body back to your brain that go, oh, everything is okay, we can relax. And then it starts to change the cognition of your brain. Resting is more of a body, so like an afferent, a body to brain type of action versus a brain to body. And that's why when people try and force rest, they're like, I don't like this. But then when they do rest, they're like, I don't know how to. So it does have that dilemma, which is like, where do I start? And that question of where do I start when it comes to creating chill and relaxing is the high achiever's nightmare, because once they're like, where do I start? I don't know, fuck it, I'm out, right? Like they can't sit in that pocket of being like, okay, I don't know something and I don't know how to do it. And I'm now going to reteach myself like I'm a dumb, right? We like to always be smart and always be like the most efficient and the most productive and doing it the best way. And we can't let go of that mindset. And these things are dancing with each other, which is why I love working with high achievers, because they're like watching the internal struggle of like, but I want it, but I can't have it, but I want it, but I can't have it. And I'm always like, because that is the conversation in my head all the time. But now that I've done that work, I get to sit back and go, that's nice. You guys can have a lovely conversation. I'm just not participating in it, which is an elusive concept to understand how you're going to get there without doing the work. Right? Yeah. Well,
speaking my language, friend.
Yeah. What note do I want to bop to next? We covered the thing about kids, which I loved. I loved that you brought that up. Like we are not conditioned like that normally. And like, it's not a skill set that people teach us, because when you're a kid, you're good at it. And then everyone's like, hey, they're good. And like, when you start changing, people are like, oh, good for them. They're working so hard at school. Or, I remember when I used to get like really hot and heavy into the studying, my mom would be like, oh, Jen, like you work so hard, just take a break. And I'd be like, ha, ha, ha. What do you mean take a break? You want me to like go on a bike ride and enjoy it? You want me to like call a friend and like play a computer game? Yes, we used to do that back in the day. Play a computer game and enjoy it. I don't want to do that. I want to do this. Right? Like I couldn't turn it off. And I was like, do other people have this problem? Like, do they like after school, they just go and they hang out with their friends and they're like happy and then they sleep well and then they come home and they're like, yeah, yay. I remember like being young and like watching, I was way too young to be watching episodes of HBO at the time, but like sitting and watching like Dexter or something. And I'd be like sitting being like, ooh, I get an hour to myself. This is myself. This is my time. And I'd sit there and not absorb anything that was happening in the show. Cause I'm like, oh my God. And I have to do this tomorrow. And then I didn't get this done. And then I'll dance tomorrow. And I can't do that. The rumination started when I was like 14. Like I couldn't chill.
Yep. And it's so important to recognize the culture that we live in and how it plays a role of, like, you think about some of these it terms or these quotes. Like, I used to have on my version of a vision board when I was younger, like beast mode, hustle, like
Walk
all
in,
of,
crawl out.
yes, and that is what is celebrated, right? Like, sacrifice all of yourself for the goal. And so there's a difference between being perseverant and then also being
Right.
abusive to the system and kind of actual, like, and I'm like so careful about this word, but like small t traumas to your body where
Yeah.
you're like really imprinting
Yeah. Core
that
beliefs.
story, and then we're actually not living in the present, we're living in a program that we have learned and then we've gotten wired into, and then every day you're on that loop, and here you are in the hamster wheel because you got to get that hit of
Yeah.
adrenaline, you got to get that hit of dopamine, and it's not coming from potentially a healthy source, it's
Yeah.
coming from this strategy where you can just feed the craving because you're so addicted to cortisol
Yeah.
because I don't know, maybe it's so many things, the group of friends that you're around, the people that you're mirroring, the TV show that you're watching,
I
your
think it comes down to core beliefs, like core beliefs of like what you believe about yourself. Like, I'm
yes,
not good enough in the now, therefore this is what I need to do to get to this elusive illusion of what is going to come. And unfortunately, high achievers, perfectionists, whatever the heck you want to call yourself, you're never going to arrive. Sorry. The journey of arriving is like, it's like watching Frodo in the Lord of the Rings. You're like, is he ever going to get there? 10 hours later with his decrepit feet, like,
right.
give up and go home because love is back at the Shire, right? And like, and then you realize that he ends up back there and you're like, oh, right. It's just, that was, I hope that some of you understood that really geeky reference, but
Yeah. You just have to mouth so much.
but we have that desire of like the need for more, 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 and you're like, that never comes. The more is literally never arriving, and you are working on this hedonic staircase of it's actually feeding into the core belief of you're never enough, because then you convince yourself at each juncture that what you've done is never enough and that you failed anyway. But instead of being like, oh, maybe I should try this differently, we're like,
Yeah. I it's like, love yourself harder. Love yourself harder. Like, where is any space for
yeah,
compassion? Where is any space for the
yeah,
fact that, like, this was actually taught to you and it's actually sold to you subliminally and overtly every single day
yeah.
that you're not
And
enough. And
that
most of the
message,
time, yeah, this like uh addiction to needing more, seeking external things, is because there is like a primal need that wasn't met in the younger years.
yeah.
So feeling like
Wah,
you're not
wah,
enough,
wah.
or scarcity, or blah, blah. But the good news is we can now reparent ourselves, hold our own hand, and realize that we already got it all. It's just going to feel a little bit crunchy
It's
when you
gonna feel
first
more than
sit
uncomfortable.
still. When you first start sitting still and go, oh no,
Yeah,
ouch, there's an ouch there, and it
yeah,
lives in your body, like you said, this
yeah.
like different, um it's
It's
your
unearthing.
body.
Whatever you just did was unearthing. It's like everything that you just went for like every year is just going, and then
Yeah,
suddenly you're like, oh, I've been living my whole life dissociated. Oh, I guess I am an anxious person. I actually didn't believe that I had these things until I was like, whoa, I finally sat still and I was like, okay, this is something I didn't understand, but now I get it.
it's so funny, like my symptom my symptoms, they're so well costumed and hidden, right? Especially if you're an athlete or you're someone that has like a high level sport,
This
or
is
an
so juicy. I
instrument
can't wait.
or something that you spend all your time committed to. And when you're being rewarded by, oh, you did a job, or you passed grade 11 piano, or you're a straight A student, or whatever. But like, I literally couldn't even sit on a couch to watch a TV show.
Yeah, yeah, I
Like,
could.
I was either standing eater, I was rolling out, I was stretching, I was walking around doing something, I was right, literally. And it comes back. Like, I'm in Germany right now. I'm a 34-year-old woman. I'm working professionally with a dance company. I had an additional 2 hours off today after I was finished, and I came home and I wouldn't sit on the couch. I couldn't. I was like, I'm just gonna make my food and then I'm gonna prep my stuff for tomorrow. And then, like, I know I have this thing with Jenna, so I just need to make sure that everything's all right. And I was like, Things are busy. I've been working a lot for 5 days straight, and the old gremlins are like,
Yeah. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah.
we know how to keep you busy and out of your own body.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to just reemphasize something that you said before about like the more, but now I'm kind of forgetting. It was in, it was out, it was in, it was out. Oh yes, I remember. The messaging, because I like the way that you're using the language, the messaging that the high achiever is receiving is do more, 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 more. So what I do when I work with people is I go, that's fantastic that that's how you think. I'm going to challenge you and tell you that we're going to move that intensity of more, 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 whatever the achievement is to, I'm going to make you go more, 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 more chill. And when you look at me and you say, oh, but that I don't like that. And that's hard. And I go, yeah, that's because it's hard for you to do less. For someone else, like someone who's like a type B, chill, lax, like, I'll get to it. To get them to like go to a conditioning class or like do something really hardcore, like go to CrossFit and like put everything on their plate and like go to work 9 to 5 and also have a second job. They're looking at you being like, no, more, no. I don't want any of that, right? And the high achiever is the opposite. So what I like to do is say, oh, you think you're good at a challenge? You think you're really good? You think you can handle this? Okay, let's shift the intensity. Where are you putting them more? Right. And that's what I did to myself, is because like after all these years of laughing at myself, being like, okay, clearly I'm not doing this right. Clearly I can't figure this out. So what I'm doing is wrong. So we're going to shift. But I looked at myself and I was like, oh, you want to do that? Sorry, Jen, you're not allowed. We're going to do this instead. And I kept resisting my natural inclination to do that thing and would pull myself back and say, but why are you doing it? What's your why? And I think that was like a really important thing to ask myself for, like, let's use working out as an example, because I was obsessed with working out and it was an issue. And I was thinking, oh, I need to do that, but I didn't need that. The need and the want are completely different things. What we need is rest. What we need is food. We need water and we need sleep and we need shelter and we need clothes sometimes, right? But what we want is all these other things. And I'd be like, well, I have to do this and this and this and this. And then I have to go to the gym and I have to work out. And then I also have to do yoga because I need this. And I kept saying I needed things, but it was more of a want versus a need. And where I started to play around with it was with working out. So I would do it and I'd be like, but why? What is it that you want? You want to feel good. Okay. Are you lying to yourself? Is feeling good the only thing that comes out of this? Can we separate that? Where else can we feel good? Right. And I started dancing around with these concepts of like, it was almost like peeling away myself from an addiction, but by asking myself the question, why? And I kept saying to myself, what if the thing that I'm doing, the thing that I don't want to let go of the most, or the thing that I'm doing to myself the most is actually the thing that's causing pain? Right? The same way that an alcoholic, when they're drinking alcohol, they're never going to look at it and be like, the alcohol's ruining my life. They're going to look at it being like, no, it's because the job this and the person that, and my family member did this, and this is the thing, this is the interpersonal thing, and it was because I went out to the party. It's all the blame. It's like, okay, well, what's the common denominator of all this? What are you doing that's contributing to this type of behavior? And I like using addictions as a good example because it blares people in the face. They're like, but you can't be addicted to something healthy. I'm like, who told you it was healthy? Right? Like moving your body is healthy. That's great. Working out every day? No. Working out 5 days a week? Who needs it? Right? What is working out? Is walking working out? I used to be like, walking, moving, walking? That's not working out. No. Walking is working out. Walking is movement. Right? And I had to go through all these like unconscious beliefs and be like, okay, doing what I want versus what I need. And that's where I got into this, conversation that we kind of started earlier, which is like those wires being crossed between enjoyment versus why is my brain malfunctioning right now? Enjoyment versus, come on, Jenna, you can do it.
Like when your work is the thing that's also play. Work, play. Okay, so a need versus a want, but then they become together. So for example, in my program, when I do in module 10, it's how to have fun, because high achievers don't know how to have fun. And I know that. Like you can say like, yeah, I went out to the bar, but like, did you have fun or did you want to get the fuck out of there the second you got in there and also ruminated and thought the whole time, maybe like 2 songs. And then you're like, okay, let's go home. I need to sleep. I can't have my sleep schedule being off. And also like, nah, why am I even here? I'm not even drinking anyway because I have problems. But you know what I mean? Like, but
when we start to mix those two together, so for example, when I make people make these lists in that module, what are the things that you like love? Okay. And now what are the things that you're doing that are mixed with the things you love? Now, all the things that are mixed with the things that you love, they don't count as rest. They don't count as play. They don't count as enjoyment. So for you, you're a dancer and you love dancing, but you don't get to go to work and create and say that that is your enjoyment and that's your time off and that's your, you know, that's your peace and your beautiful place. It's like the same way that I tell my people that, you know, going to the gym just because like that's your reprieve after work, that's not your relaxing, and that's not your chill, and that's not your enjoyment, that's not your play. It's a completely different category because you're putting it and now convincing yourself that that is the good that you've done for yourself for the day. So now you have the reason to do all the other things. Now you don't have to chill because like you gave that time to yourself. I fucking hate that sentence. I gave that time to myself. No, you didn't. You didn't give time to yourself. What are you, like the mother of, what's that, the mother of time, whatever? You don't give it to yourself. It's like, it's in your day. It's not a gift. Chilling's not a gift, guys. It's like, again, back to the beginning, it is a freaking necessity. And if you are not treating it as a necessity, and you are literally coming to me being like, well, I don't understand. Like, why is my heart still beating when I'm chilling out? And why is this still happening when I'm doing this? It's like, for those of you listening to the audio, I'm looking at you and then
eyes are wide.
Yeah,
we're stuck in the stress cycle. We haven't closed the stress loop, so your body still thinks it's running from a lion. It doesn't know that you're safe because we haven't taught it what safety feels like and what safety looks like. And that's when, like, I love this reframe idea of like, what's the want and what's the need? Like, you need to run from the lion. You don't need to go to the gym when you're already exhausted.
Yeah.
Just because that's now your strategy for coping with the stress of the thing that happened the day before.
Yeah.
So
and then you realize you're broken.
Well, I feel like I was the queen and definitely still am the queen of like distracting myself, even with like this self-development work, right? Like I can use that, anything that is too much, anything like in too much extremes, anything, right? Like I'll be loving a book that I'm reading, but it's self-development and I'm also making notes and I'm journaling and it lights me up. Like I literally know it's part of my purpose on this planet, my soul's journey. And that doesn't count as pleasure, play, or rest for me just because I love it. And now it's also something that I want to offer the world and I want it to be a part of my work, but it's the same thing as dance. It's a slippery slope. Yeah. And then I remember just like, I don't know, I'd say like my biggest awakening to all of this was like 2017. So 7 years ago when I made a list and I was like sparks of joy and I had coffee, which is a stimulant, which gives my anxiety and my addiction to adrenaline even more.
Like, I mean, coffee would definitely be on my list of things that I love, but like for me, it's the process of pouring it into the cup. Like there's something so ASMR for me where I'm like, okay,
yeah, so but that's really beautiful. What I love about that, and if we get like really nuanced and specific here, is this: if you do it with a mindfulness. And then you're like, what does it smell like? What does it look? What does it taste like? What's the cup feel like? And so now I actually could put coffee in my pleasure category, my rest category, because I align it with ritual of mindfulness. It is the one hot sip I take, and now I only drink decaf, by the way. I've been going caffeine free for a while because I hit burnout again at the beginning of the summer.
So when are we working together?
What's that?
Good. So when are we going to start working together?
Yeah, right. We just talk like this and like and think we have it all figured out, and then be like, well.
I'm taking notes about you right now.
Yeah.
In asterisk, she's like, okay, I'm nervous now. Everyone always says that when I go to a party. They're like, are you like analyzing me? I'm like, yes. And then I walk away and I'm like, you're okay with that though, right? Like, I mean, you have to be because you asked the question. So you must be okay with it. And like, you know, it's always funny. The people who always like reach out to me at parties are the people who are like the most closed off. It's like they want to make it a joke. They want to be like, yeah, it's cool. And I'm like, I know you have feelings, and I walk away.
Yeah. Also because you see it, we see it because we are it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a disease. I know. You can only see when you're trustworthy. Like you can only, it's hard to put into words. Like you can only see it when you know it because you're inside of them. And like, that's what I always tell people, like, I'm not reading your mind. I'm just, I am you. So like, and
Yeah.
I'm mindful of all the thought processes and they're all, put in these categories of different versions of me. So I know you. I don't like, people are like, hi, my name is, I'm like, I know who you are.
Well, and not to mention we're all the same. We're all living on the same earth that again has these messages and these conditionings, especially if you're in North America, where you can't get away from the never doing enough, not good enough stories.
Yeah.
And then you add the fact that you're maybe a little bit more geared towards this high functioning type of anxiety or this perfectionism, this high achievement, and you're just like, oh, I see you. I see you, I am you. Oh, everyone's codependent. I get it. Right.
Yeah.
We're all
But the
getting
best is when people are like, no, I'm not, I'm fine. I'm like, okay. And there's some people that don't have these issues. Like there are some people who are just straight, chilling, type B, like, that's all good. But like they don't even give off the same vibe. So you're like, oh, you're something I'll never be. I'm gonna go this way now.
like in a more like spiritual way, people be like, oh, your energy or your vibration, but at the end of the day it's actually your nervous system. It's, are you regulated? Like when my best friends throughout my life have been normally much more regulated people than me because my system gravitates towards someone that can regulate me.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm the opposite. I am the here person where everyone's just like zoop, zoop, zoop. Like I am surrounded by fucking chaos. But it's all good because I actually love the chaos. Which is an odd juxtaposition for a human being, I know, to also have these experiences, but then carry a lot of chaos. But I wouldn't have it any other way because I love it.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
So I want to talk about a really bad story of mine. It was the first one that came into my mind when I was like, oh, when did I realize that I had like a serious problem? And it was probably when I was in university, maybe third year. Yeah, that sounds about right. I was in third year university and I was the kid who was getting like 98% on every exam, 100%. Like I was like the student that all the professors knew. Like I was very, but like I was like the baddie, but like like that girl shouldn't be getting 100. Like how is she doing that? And I'll tell you how I was doing it. I was still engaging in all of my social activities, but bringing my fucking notes to them. Okay. I would go. I remember there was this one time where my boyfriend at the time, his family, they were all going on a shopping trip and I love shopping. And I was like, thou shall not miss a shopping trip to Yorkdale. For those of you that don't live in Toronto, it is a very great mall. Okay. I was like, I will not be missing this shopping trip. And I want to bond with, my boyfriend, his family. I like them. So I brought my computer in my hand, open, and was shopping and studying at the same time and walking. And my boyfriend's family was just like, oh, she's just so smart. Like, she's like working so hard. And I was like, yeah, and I just want to be here with you guys. Like I was like framing it as if I was heroic. I'm a boss ass bitch because I'm studying and shopping at the same time. Like, boom, get at me. And I think about that memory all the time because I'm like, how sick did I have to be to not be able to leave my computer at home and be mindful and engage in the activity that I was in. But like, what was I racing toward? Didn't I just have tomorrow and the next day and the next day? Like, couldn't I just like, was I compulsively repeating the same thing over and over again to get what? To get the extra percent or to like reconfirm to myself that like, I knew what I was reading and I knew what I was talking about. And it really hit me where I was like, I'm not doing anything for fun in my life because every time I try and have fun, I was letting my compulsion or the anxiety I was doing a behavior, right? So a lot of people have just the anxiety and then they'd be shopping. They'd be like, oh, I should be studying right now. Like, I'm anxious. I don't want to be here. I don't want to go. That's part of anxiety. And that's the first part of the anxiety that I had. But the compulsion was bring your notes with you. That is, if you saw someone walking in the mall with their computer while they were shopping, what would you think? Wouldn't you be afraid of me?
It's like just so good. It's so good because also multitasking is rewarded culturally.
I used to bring my notes to the treadmill at the gym, and I would put the notes on the treadmill. And you know, there is good research between walking and studying at the same time, and that's how I framed it to myself. But at the same time, where was my rest?
That's the thing, right? Like, I have to constantly talk about like challenging yourself to not doing the thing that you're living like that you're programmed to do. When you're living in the program, you're always going to try to choose doing two things at once. You're always going to try to schedule 16 things in your day. I often challenge myself with, you get to do one thing today.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Can you
The
imagine?
challenge is, can you do one thing at a time also?
Yeah.
So
Mindfulness.
instead of making your breakfast and brushing your teeth,
Yeah, it's a no.
right? And it's like under this umbrella of mindfulness, but it's so much more than that, and it's
Yeah.
so much deeper, and it's so much harder than just take a deep breath and be present while
Yeah.
you're eating breakfast.
Yeah.
Like, well, no, because when you're at the point where you're shopping with your laptop and you're trying to have quality time with your partner and his family, like I have so many similar memories. Most are like vacations, or like going to a cottage, going to a friend's cottage.
Oh, I have such bad ones with that too.
A lot of mine manifest in like control around eating and exercise. Of
Yeah.
course, as a dancer, it's like the meals that I would pre-pack and bring with me, and like just it's a whole thing. And it's,
We should do another one on eating disorders after.
Definitely, absolutely, 1,000,000%. But it's a mechanism, right? It's something that clicks in because, again, what is the like primal need, or what is the core wound underneath it all? So let me ask you a question. Maybe I'm taking this totally off course, but just because it just kind of like pinged me.
I love going off
So
course.
you haven't noticed this conversation so far. We are the pinball machine. Like, so if you hadn't been able to study while you were shopping, what's the fear of not studying?
That
Like,
I'm
not
yeah. So
in
it
your
was
age.
so if I didn't study, then I didn't trust that I knew the information. And if I didn't know the information, that meant that I wasn't going to be confident when I went to the test. And if I wasn't confident in the test, I wasn't going to get 100%. And if I didn't get 100%, then they were going to judge me because I'm the one who gets 100%. And if I don't get 100% and I don't get that, then I'm not good enough, which also stems from the childhood, you know, wound and core belief of, where did you go wrong? That was a constant question asking me, oh, as a joke. Oh, where'd you lose the mark? Where'd you go wrong? And then that goes a lot deeper into, what's wrong with you? Because that was asked a lot to me as a child, right? So when you look at these things and you go doom, 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 you're like, oh, there it is. Whoop, there it is.
That's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to like untangle the web,
Yeah.
and just like show the thing that's underneath all of these kind of mechanisms and habits, and our inability to rest and chill. Because if you had stopped, you maybe would have had to feel how much pain that version of Jenna was in.
Exactly. And now for those of you who just watched me do that fast and you were like, how the fuck did you just distill that down to that? That's what it's like doing the work, right? When you know what your core beliefs are and your cognitive distortions are, like my core belief, and I talk about this with my patients a lot and people in my program, my core belief is I am stupid. Okay. So if I feel stupid or I feel embarrassed or that I'm not right, then my nervous system will do whatever it possibly can to prove my rightness, whether that's through over explaining, over studying, overdoing. It's like, I need to prove that I'm right because I'm not stupid. Because something happened, obviously, when I was a child, where when I was made to feel stupid, the shame that was sitting, and that was so painful for me that I needed to cover it up. Right. So that is where I always want people to go, because when you find your core belief, if you are out in public and something triggers you and you feel something and you're like, woo, you can go right away. Where did I feel stupid in that? Right? Where, if your core belief is I'm not good enough, it's like, where did I not feel good enough when I did that thing? And then you can find out why you feel that way. And when we talk about reparenting, that's looking at yourself being like, okay, I see why you felt that way. It's all good because you are, and it's all good and you're not stupid and no one else thinks that, it's just you, idiot. And then you can be able to move through it with a lot more, I want to say peace and a lot more ease, instead of sitting there being like, why do I feel this way? And then a lot of high achievers like to bully themselves into feeling different because they just don't like feeling it. So they're like, you're actually reinforcing the core belief on top of it by being like, you're an idiot, figure it out, stop feeling this way. And then you're like, oh, I'm literally doing what, was learned in me as a kid. Something I wanted. Yeah.
I think that like identifying the limiting beliefs and the core beliefs, the core wounds are such a pivotal piece to being able to access rest and play and pleasure.
Correct.
Because still living with that unconscious story, constant, you'll never be able to like fully surrender to those things.
Yeah, you can't the answer why never makes sense.
Feel the freedom, or you said like it allows peace, like it brings you just a little bit more peace to be like, oh, that makes so much sense. And the high achiever perfectionist absolute mind, like I always say, oh,
It lights up.
It's like a brain massage when
Yeah.
you can just close the loop.
Yeah, it's
Oh gosh,
the aha moment. The aha moment for a high achiever is like next level. Like you think that you've released serotonin, you haven't until you've done that.
No, truly. And that's where it gets slippery again, because then you want the why for
Obsessed.
everything.
Yes.
Like this. Why
Yes.
am I like this?
Yes.
Now I need to know why. And sometimes you get to know why, and sometimes you won't.
And you
ever.
have to be okay with that. And then you guys are like, okay, well, I'm not okay with not knowing. And then you're like, okay, and now we're at the next layer of help. So yeah.
Feelings are just sensations in your body and they pass in 90 seconds. Get over it.
Yeah. I do tell my patients that all the time. I'm like, your feelings are untrustworthy. So just wait a little bit and then revisit it and see if you still feel the same. If you do, it's like getting a tattoo, wait a little bit of time before you make that decision instead of, acting on the thing that you want. And if you're going to act on your emotions, you better sure as hell hope you're going to get your way out of it. All right. Okay. I do want to make a full loop with what we were just talking about with me being in the mall. Me being in the mall and doing that shitty shit at the same time. Your nervous system literally doesn't know what signal it's receiving when you're doing something like that. So when I was talking about making those lists and breaking it down, and you're saying just make your coffee, in isolation and just brush your teeth in isolation, your body, in order to actually feel at ease and not have symptoms of anxiety and symptoms of depression, which I usually call the discrepancy of the conscious and the subconscious mind. Usually when those are disparate, that's when we start to feel things and we're like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. But when Jenna, what's wrong with your brain today? When we break those things in two different places, that's when we start to see that magic happen in the nervous system. Because if it's getting opposite signals of, let's call it fight and flight as at the same time as rest and digest, your body doesn't know how to respond back. It's like, which signal do I respond to? And I think that that's where I was getting at with the neuroplasticity concept before, which is then what fires together wires together, right? So then you can't chill because your body's like, okay, now I'm doing something relaxing, like making a coffee. Why is my heart racing? It's like, because it learned in all those other different activities that you were doing that when you're activating this part of the nervous system, that's also getting activated at the same time. And your body can't organize it. Sorry to say, guys, your body is really, really smart, but it's not as smart as looking at all the signals and being like, I like you and I don't like you, so now I'm going to choose that. It's just having things coming at it. And it's trying its best to triage, but in the real world, its best at triaging is then creating symptoms at times of rest. And you mentioned before, like, oh, I can't watch TV and relax, or like whatever you couldn't do. And that used to be me. I would say when I was in fourth year university, I think I was like realizing, no, it wasn't fourth year. It was like maybe my second year. Oh, Jenna, my second year into like med school, where I was like, I can't watch TV. Like I'm watching this show, but I'm not laughing. I'm not engaged with the characters. Like I'm numb. I'm like not able to not think about all the other things I have to do. Couldn't sit still. Like I had to be on my computer at the same time or scrolling through my phone or doing whatever. I couldn't just sit there and go, wow, what a show. And there was one show that I will never forget that like pulled me out of all this. And I was like, oh my God, I'm healed. I wasn't actually healed, but it was Life in Pieces. Have you seen that show?
I never like watched it all the way through, but I know that show.
Otis.
And hello, Life in Pieces fan.
Can I get a hey?
I know the premise and I can see why you would.
It wasn't even that profound. It wasn't, it wasn't that hilarious. I mean, there was funny moments, there's funny characters, but there was something about where I was at the time where I was sitting and something captured my attention enough to be like, whoa, I'm like not paying attention to anything else while I'm watching this. And I was like, oh my God, like I haven't been practicing mindfulness in this area for so long because I was so well practiced at it like 10 years ago that by the time I like got into this high stressed realm, I wasn't able to access it because I wasn't aware. I was just sitting being like, this is life. Doom, 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 doom. Gotta wake up the next day at 7 a.m. and go to do this and go to clinic and then go see those patients and then come home and then I have to teach yoga and then I gotta work out in the middle of the day and eating lunch. No, I gotta eat lunch while I'm with a patient in between while I'm doing the charting. And then I'm gonna go to the gym in between and then I'm gonna go teach yoga after. And I was like, right. And then the moment that I sat and watched the TV show, I was like, oh my God, like what's happening? That was actually the moment where I probably started reworking like my entire schedule of my life. I started scheduling in TV. I had TV time. I was like, oh, okay, I like this. I'm gonna have TV time. TV time is part of my mental health time. And at the beginning, it was not that. My heart was racing while I was watching TV and I was like, because like, then I was focusing on it and I knew that like, I'm like, oh, this is my downtime. And like, now I was like, I'm going to be good at downtime. And my heart was like, you will not be good at downtime. My legs are like twitching. They're like, you will not be good at downtime. And I was like, I will be good at downtime. But over time, when you start practicing it, you get better at it. The same way that when you practice riding a bike, you get better at riding a bike. When you practice a kid, when they start walking, they practice, they get better. When you practice math, you get better at math. When you practice, training a dog, you get better at training a dog. Sorry, my dog was right there and I couldn't think of anything else. Okay. I'll mute you now. Hold on. Someone's painting. They're painting the outside of my house and Otis just loves a good audience. He's like, stare at me, I'm pretty. So that was the beginning of it for me. And I had like a ritual when I sat down. I'd be like, okay, we're transitioning from work to TV time. I'm going to sit and do TV time. I'm now going to only focus on TV time. And I would watch my hand do the twitch. It like reaches for the phone and you're like, nope. Or you're like, realize your eyes are like gazing away. You're like, nope. Or you have to actually practice the focus, which is why when I work with people in my program, I do meditation right at the beginning. I'm like, you can't do these things without having focus, and you can't have focus, mental focus, without practicing meditation. You can't. Even if you say, okay, I don't like this term, but watching TV is my meditation. It's like, well, you better keep bringing your focus back to that over and over and over and over and over again. And every time it wanders, you better bring it back, being like, they're talking, because it's not meditation. Meditation needs to be practiced outside of what you're doing to get strong there. So that's when I really started bringing those things back in, which is what I want is to be chill. And what I want is to be focused and mindful, but I can't do that without this skill. So I started practicing the skill of focus and staying in the moment so that I could be there to stay in the moment and focus, and also create a boundary around, okay, symptoms, you will no longer be here. So I'd sit down and watch TV and I'd go, okay, like, and my heart would go and I'd be like, I feel you, I hear you, but we're just not going to do that right now. We're going to stay focused on this. Right? Instead of spiraling into like, oh my God, my heart, oh my God, this means I'm anxious. Oh my God, I'm bad. I'm watching TV. Everything's bad. It's like, no, just, you're watching TV, your heart's going. I feel my heart moving on. I'm watching TV. Oh, I feel my breathing moving on. Oh, I'm watching TV. Oh, I really feel that I want to touch my computer, moving on. And I kept doing that and kept redirecting my focus, because your brain doesn't have boundaries. Your brain is a spontaneous organism. It just goes boop, 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 boop. Like, have you ever like laid in a meditation and suddenly you're like thinking about a squirrel and you're like, oh, what? Okay. Like, okay, don't know where that came from, but okay.
Our brain and our mind are meant to think. It's actually amazing. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, fantastic. We're alive.
It's meant to think. You're meant to have thoughts. It's a great thing until you get stuck and you get addicted in fight or flight. So then your body, like you say, you said a word that I really love. Oh, transition. I don't want to talk, but if you've been so used to being in fight or flight that has now become your safe zone, when you stop and you try to get into parasympathetic rest and digest, so a resting state or a still state or a play state or a pleasure sate, even you want to eat your food and not be driving your car and doing your makeup, because that was me.
Holy shit, Kelly.
That's when what's that?
I said, holy shit, Kelly.
Oh,
someone call the authorities.
Aren't we amazing? Like, it's amazing.
Speak for yourself. My car would be in a ditch.
It's crazy. Like, similarly to your taking your notes to the shopping mall, it's like when I notice these multiple activities happening at once show up in my life, then I go sound the alarm.
Yeah.
Where are we at? So you actually need that moment of transition. I love that you said that, because you actually have to talk to the part of yourself that thinks it's unsafe to rest. You actually have to say, hey, like little Jenna, hey, little Kelly, hey, like part of me that has only known and only been modeled a dysregulated system, and the world around me is telling me I need to constantly be go go go. Hey, I see you, I love you, I totally get it. We're going to get back there, we're going to get back to it, don't worry. You're going to do the things, you're going to get the to-do list done, but right now 5 minutes and we're going to transition. Right now, come with me, I got you, I'm going to hold your hand.
Yeah.
And we're going to breathe, we're going to be here right now, and you're going to find your own body, and you're going to be like, oh, right, it's safe. And you got to re-identify, you got to redefine what safety is, what safety feels like. Because for sure, for me, especially as a mover, as a dancer, as a creative, like safety feels like, mindfulness feels like when my mind is only on one thing. That used to only be able to happen in the dance studio, or only be able to happen when,
That
whatever
was
you
the
are.
only time you reached flow state, was when you were dancing.
I
That's
could, it was alive in like my writing or my reading or conversations like this about self-development and the human mind and the human condition and all these things, but I didn't have enough time to explore pleasure, play, rest, fun when I was writing, blah, 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 because I was too busy with a schedule that had 16 things on it in the day.
Yeah, I actually, and this is something I give myself that pat on the back and the clap for. Like, I'm like fucking chill, bro. Like, I'm chill. I did not used to be. And like now I find flow state in everything that I do, in every single moment. And I don't usually like the cheese of being like, be grateful, because you don't have to be grateful for the things that you experience. You have to observe them, you know? And I like to use language, because I'm very specific on the language I use. But like, what an interesting thing, if I'm like walking and I feel a certain way, I'll observe it. It's not like, wow, I'm so grateful for the sun and I'm so grateful for the trees. I'm not walking around doing that. It's all an observation. It's a very neutral observation. I saw one of my friends today on social media. She like posted something. I've actually had her live before. She was like, when's the last time you hugged a tree? And there's a part of my program where I do like an actual activity with a tree, not to be like, trees, I love trees, we're grateful for trees. Like, yeah, sure, great, we love trees. I have a tree tattoo, like, yay, trees. But what's the interaction that you're actually having with this thing that's in front of you? It doesn't have to be grateful. It doesn't have to be good or bad. It's just an observation. And I think that people have missed the neutral observation and everything. And that's where that contentness and the chill is found. It's not within the up and it's not within the low. It's not within like this toxic positive. I love my life. I love everything. Thank God I get to do this. And it's not in the treachery of like the pain that we're holding on to. Cause like shit, we all hold a lot of pain. Well, not all, but most of us. But it's about the in-between moments and how we're able to just sit and observe and go, okay, this is life. Life is this in-between. It's the way that I look at you on the camera and I go, okay, I'm watching the way that Kelly's moving her hand behind her head, and I'm, observing the stucco behind her head, and I'm watching you and the way you're moving and what lights you up and what doesn't, but I'm not going, I love Kelly, or I hate that she's lifting her hand behind her head. It's just an observation, and I think that a lot of us miss that neutral, which is why we're not able to sit in the silence or sit in the comfort of doing nothing, because we don't know what neutral is. We're either like elevated or we're like down here. None of us like live in the here. We're just like constantly passing by it instead of just being like, And it doesn't have to be your personality. You don't have to be flat. Like, you just have to observe in between.
We love feeling the extreme signs of our aliveness. We don't realize that our aliveness is in the in-between moments of the nothingness. Like I too think language is so important, which is so funny to make. And
you're freezing right now.
We can get owned and we can get really language. Oh no, am I back?
You're back.
Oh, internet connection unstable.
It's okay. Give it a hot second. Don't move too much. She's in Germany, for those wondering. Yeah, there was something else about language that I wanted to mention, but again, it's like we've talked about so many things that I can't even remember anymore. But I do have a module in my program where we're like talking about subconscious and conscious languaging and how they have to be the same. Like you can't just force yourself into thinking or feeling like I'm going to be chill right now. And like that's what your brain wants, but like your body doesn't want it. So you're going to say, I'm going to participate in rest right now. And I'm going to stay regardless of how uncomfortable it gets. Right. I'm going to stick with this and I'm not going to teach myself that I can just leave it. I'm going to teach myself that this is something that is a need and it has to be done in order for me to do all the other things that I want. All the things that I'm not noticing in my life are being ruined by my lack of rest and my lack of chill. How can I be in the now, even if the now sucks? Like, what is this weird obsession we have with everything always being good and everything always being like, it has to be great and it has to be something. It's like, just be okay with it not being okay. You're still resting. Right. And then eventually 6 months later, after you've practiced this uncomfortable practice over and over and over again, which is stay in the rest, put the rest in, be the rest, be the rest. But when you do it over and over again, 6 months later, you're going to look back and go, whoa, I didn't even realize I was just resting for 2 hours and I was okay with it. Or, oh, I took the whole day off, or I went out and did whatever I wanted to do. And it didn't even bother me that I wasn't being productive. Like, do you know how much more time I have in my days now that I look at myself and I go, did you eat? Did you drink? Is the house broken down? No. Okay, we're good. Like, is it a want and the need? Like, did I attend to what I needed to? If I don't walk in the day, am I going to have a judgment fest over myself that I didn't get my walk in? It's like, no. Am I going to get mad that I didn't meditate? No. The funniest thing when I work with these high achievers and peace of mind is like, I'll give them the meditation schedule and I tell them to pick one. And like most of my people are like, I'm a high achiever. I'm going to do tier 3. And then they do it. And then they get mad at themselves when they don't do the thing. I'm like, perfect lesson. Let's go. Right. Like when you don't get to the thing, it's like, who cares? Like literally what happened? What happened when you didn't do the thing? Did something bad happen or did you just talk bad to yourself? And that's the bad thing that happened. Like that's a pathology and people don't recognize it as a pathology. They're like, well, that's just who I am. I'm like, no, it's not. That's not who you are. Who you are is getting mad at yourself when you're not perfect. What?
Right. Even with the language and with the labels of like, oh, I'm a high achiever or oh, I'm a perfectionist. It's like, oh, you're not anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna,
Surprise.
and what if you literally never use that word again? What are you?
This is what I always say to people. I go, okay, so you like 100%? I'm like, we're going to give 100% of 80%. Boom, mind shift, right? Like now you have 20% left over to do what? Oh, chill. What? Oh my God. Right. and I think it's the discomfort of what happens. And, you have to let things unearth. And I think that's people are like, oh, so I'll just chill and things will get better. I'm like, no, you're going to chill. Things are going to get really uncomfortable and you're actually going to learn how to tolerate it with different skills that you're going to learn. And then eventually you're going to look back and you're going to go, I'm very different. I'm very different. Like I am so different than I was 5 years ago. I am so different than I was 10 years ago, not just because of how I process information, but it's been the creativity that I afforded myself by letting go. And I think that a lot of people in the place that they start, they don't have the flexibility because their brain doesn't allow for it. And I go, I get it. You don't have the creativity to see it this way. So instead of you seeing it, you're just going to prove it to yourself. And I'm going to give you a blueprint on how to do it. And that's why I like working in the program, because it doesn't require you to be a profound thinker. And it doesn't require you to be open-hearted and open-minded. It's just like, do the shit. Do the shit, see what comes up. Do the shit, see what comes up. Do the shit, see what comes up. And it's like, suddenly your brain starts going, whoom, whoom, whoom. And it starts opening. And then you're like, huh, I didn't think of it that way before. I'm like, yeah, it's because you had no perspective. Right.
And it's where the neuroplasticity, like you were talking about, comes into play because we've etched a certain pathway, not even etched, we've like carved with a knife that like this is the only way to feel good, which feel good might be fight or flight, might be living in anxiety. Like that's feeling good to you. So now we're just going to start to take like a very light colored pencil and just like offer a new pathway. You're not going to want to take it because the other one's divot is so big, you just fall into it automatically by accident. But the window of tolerance must be stretched. And that's where these moments of rest or transition or talking to yourself and it's okay, we're just going to try this, and we just move slowly, and we don't have to understand it, you just have to kind of do it. And then I have a perfect example. Like I was at the airport coming to Germany to do this job. I had no idea what I was in for, like so many unknowns, like literally my nervous system and my ego's nightmare. No control, no understanding of what I was going into, tons of like old stories and self-doubt popping up, and I was just like ping ping ping, bitches, I see you. I see you. Thank you so much for trying to protect me. I see you, perfectionist. I see you, control freak. It's all good. I'm going to invite you all on the bus. I'm still in the driver's seat because guess what? I'm going to sit in this airport and still feel peaceful and restful. I'm
Yeah.
going to, like you say, observe or be the witness, or I like think instead of gratitude, like appreciation. Like, can I just appreciate that I'm alive right now? Because at the end of the day, like time is the only thing there really is. That's the only thing we lose.
Yeah. And you're not giving it to yourself. It just exists.
It just is. I just was where I was because once I started doing this type of work years ago, I literally got on the Kelly rocket ship and I'm like, it's not easy, but like the rocket ship just keeps going, oh my God, and then this is gonna happen, and then this is gonna happen, and this is gonna happen. And then you're gonna have to make like 25 harder decisions each time. It's only gonna get more uncomfortable. And
That's
every time
so interesting to hear you say this. It really is.
then every time I step into discomfort that stretches my window of tolerance, the universe goes, here's your golden ticket to the next level of who you are and the next opportunity. And then you're going to meet that person, you're going to get that phone call, and da 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 da. And I have a new mantra and affirmation, whatever, that is like, my life illuminates, my life expands and explodes when I rest. When I have ease in my life, I get rewarded. And so I actually know that the creativity and the downloads and the ideas and the next right thing and the next right step and the next boost comes from me relaxing every time.
It's like, I guess, manifestation in a way for you. Like for me, I think I've become so well practiced at what I decided because I was so not willing to live like that. Like I couldn't do the forward. The forward gave me too much like, I've gotten so good at like every single day I go, today I do this, today I do that. Like I don't think past a week. I don't think past a few days actually. Like when people like book my calendar, like I only book during like the week. You want something? Is it there? You take it. You're not booking me like 2 weeks from now. Like I don't give that option really. Like it's day by day, because I recognize that that's where my anxiety brain goes, is like that becomes that hedonic cycle for me. So I just stay in the now, which is, again, that is the mental focus of what meditation provides and what mindfulness provides, which is every time the thought comes in of, oh, I should, I'm like, boom. Or, I could be doing that, boom. I actually just slice it at the knees every time it comes, because the fantasy of whatever it is that I'm thinking about, the bringing it to fruition or thinking about what that leads to, it creates so much unnecessary suffering that I'm like, why? It's like responsibly cutting something at the knees and going, no. Which is how I probably keep my peace more often than I even notice, because it's subconscious. It's like when you bite your nails, you don't recognize you're biting your nails. And then to stop the habit, you have to be like, no, no, no. And until suddenly you're like, wow, how did I stop biting my nails? It's like you said no to yourself all the time. That's a boundary. Yeah. And I think that people don't understand that with their anxiety. They're like, I can't do that. I'm like, well, you could if you just started. If you just started to try somewhere with a few skills and like, yeah, we can work on those skills, but if you start, then you will end up somewhere. But I can guarantee you that you're not going to end up on the other side if you keep saying, I can't do that. Because if you can't, then you can't, and then you'll stay where you are. And then you have to succumb to the concept that you're actually not going to get better. And you have to be okay with that. And if you're okay with that, then by all means go for it. But you're a high achiever, so I know you're not okay with it. So let's stop having the stupid conversation, right? So that's kind of like how when I hear people talk, that's what I hear all the time. Oh, but I don't think I can. I'm like, well, you actually didn't try. So if you're okay with that, then that's fine. But I wouldn't be okay with that, which is why I changed my life. I saw what my life was giving me. I didn't like it.
And I like how you're saying, like, I'm responsibly stopping it. I'm responsibly cutting it at the knees because you've taken the time to get to know yourself and where your capacity is at, and what the most mindful, beneficial, and healthiest way for you to look at your life. And that's not looking further than a week ahead. And so you now have a responsibility to yourself, to Jenna's like highest version of self right now, where you're at, because you're just going to keep growing. You're going to keep expanding and learning more and getting better and better and more.
But I won't notice it because of the practice.
And it's so incremental, but it's by having accountability and responsibility to yourself and being at your highest and best and feeling good. And again, your highest and best could be a 10% one day, but that's where you're at. But you always have this sort of boundary around those symptoms. And it's such a nice like nugget and simple way to look at honing in on these things without being like, but I'm a mess and I'm not ready to feel all of this stuff at once. It's like bite sizes, and then all of a sudden you're there, or you realize that you've made this change and you stop biting your nails or something that you said.
I would also rather like mobilize myself when I'm like tinkering low, where I'm like, hey, I'm chill. I'd rather look at myself and be like, hey, now I want this. And I know I have the stores, like the actual energy stores to achieve and get to it and do it. I'd rather be there than being up here and being like, how do I get down there? How do I get down there? It's like, it's way easier to lift and motivate into something. And make it just that small, like you said, a nugget sized thing of lifting versus being up here all the time and then like kind of wanting more, but also wanting less and not being happy. Like there's just no happiness up there. and I think that's the mental trick.
It's so true. You're actually just riding
the way
dysregulation and addiction. And it is all of these things. And it's totally not sustainable. And eventually something will manifest as illness or sickness or dis-ease in your body. And it's like, you could catch it before and choose to really look at it, or you could wait to get hit in the face with a 2x4, known as all of this.
I love doing that. I want to.
It'll always find you, it'll always find you one way or another. So it's just how you want to get there.
Yeah. So I have kept you way longer than you wanted to be here because you tired. Kelly's 6 hours ahead, but I do want to leave everyone with one thing, because I feel like we did talk about quite a bit of skills that you can create around finding chill for yourself and being that. I think that within us talking about it, we're not prescribing to someone saying, do this. I think that they've been able to walk away with some skills of like, how do I create that boundary? Or how do I start thinking about what that means? Or how do I start to schedule chill into my life and then experience what that feels like? And, by all means, if you don't feel like we have, touched the surface on what you want to talk about, message me. I will talk to you about this. We're all good. The conversation will never end. However, I do want to leave people with something special that I started doing a long time ago about like, how do you go out and do something and you're not chill about it, and you don't feel comfortable with how it feels? Like if you're with someone watching TV and you do feel your anxiety, or you are shopping and you do feel that, or you're going to a social event and you don't want to go because of whatever. I did this thing where I started exposing myself to the people I was around. And I think that it put me in a position of a lot of power instead of putting me in this like scared ruminating in my head thing. I would show up and I'd be like, I've got to be honest. I don't want to be here because my anxiety is telling me that I need to be doing this instead, which is going to take away from the experience of this. But I want to expose myself and share that so that I can literally leave my shit on the floor. I'll leave it at the door and then go in and then be engaged. Because if you're holding on to that, that's going to be the cycle of thought the entire time is, if I've created this feeling of being trapped, how do I get out? Instead of, okay, I thought that that's what was trapping me. Now I've told you about it. So it's clearly not trapping me anymore because I can leave at any time and I could do whatever I want. But now I'm accountable to someone else who's now going to engage with me and be like, halfway through the movie, like, are you good? Like, are you feeling okay? And I'm actually might say, yeah, I actually don't feel the anxiety anymore. Or if I am, I can look over at them and be like, yeah, I'm still feeling it. And they'll be like, okay. Or, exposing yourself. And that's a very scary thing for, I think, the high achiever perfectionist, because they're like, people can't see me. They're going to know. I can't let them know. Like, it has to be in here. And it's like, no, just share it. Just share it. And someone might actually one day look at you and be like, yo, you're fucking cool. Right? Like,
yeah. And it gives, two things came up for me there. One is it gives other people then permission to out some of their shadowy stuff. So
Mm.
like shadows are those
Oh my God,
things,
emotional connection. Does that scare you guys too?
right? Like, so you create the ripple, and then too, like, it loses its power when you speak it out loud. Like,
Yeah.
secrets keep us sick, or the shadows only have the power when they're in the darkness. So then you bring the light on them, and they're just going to dissipate. So it's really powerful. It's really amazing to just kind of allow it. And then most of the time, when you tell people, they're gonna be like, "Oh, damn, me too."
Yeah.
Or like, "I'm sorry you're feeling that way." So then you're gonna get a ton of support and be like, "I'm not alone, and I won't be abandoned, and I am
Yeah.
worthy." And
Yeah.
then problem solved.
Problem solved partially, maybe at the beginning, and then there's
Yeah, I know.
but no, I find like exposing yourself is really fascinating because like sometimes my people will come to me and be like, okay, I have anxiety and depression and OCD and I have borderline personality disorder, and I go, okay, and they're like, okay, and I'm like, okay, like what's your point?
It's just words. It's just
Yeah.
labels.
Like, okay, what's your point? So we're gonna do something about it. Okay, cool. Like moving on. So
You're a human living in a very complicated world at a very complicated time in history right now. Right.
I always find it fascinating. So like, yeah, if that's one thing that you guys have trouble doing, like expose yourself to the fact of the situation. I'm feeling this. This is the dilemma that I'm having. Like, I need to talk this out loud and problem solve it because I want to make the right selection, or maybe I need some help making a selection on how I'm going to create the boundary. And can you help me with that? And it's like, okay, like it's really, it's a lot harder in here than it is like out in conversation. So let's leave them with that for today. Okay. We will have a further conversation, I'm sure, soon about other topics because clearly me and you are both itching to talk about addiction to, I want to say control. I think that could be our next topic, addiction to control, because that's like a high achiever's nightmare. And sigh. But like, yeah, talking about maybe food and working out and that kind of stuff, like perfectionistic style of living your life. Because I think a lot of people can relate to that too. And then sharing how we busted through that, because I think it's helpful to hear how we're one way and then we become something different. Because it gives people hope to hear that they don't actually have to be where they are right now. They just can't see their way out of it because they're inside of it. And you can't see clearly when you're in something. Is something I always say is you just don't have the perspective, and you have to be able to put the steps in and the work in to get to the other side, to then look back and go, oh, there's my hindsight. I'm different because I put in that work, and thank goodness. Right.
And often we have to see to believe to be expanded for our brain and our
Yeah.
mind to conceptualize that it's possible. It's why Brene Brown says like storytelling is the greatest teacher. And
Yeah.
that's why you telling your story is what your clients relate to, and what the people I work with relate to when we share and we expose ourselves. So it's better than a prescription of these are the 5 things you do to learn how to chill and rest.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not going to do that. You literally won't, because there's no proof, and those are just words on a page.
Yeah.
You're maybe going to connect or empathize with something that one of us have spoken about and go, oh, that like one weird thing she talked about being at the airport, right, that could work for me. And so yeah, hopefully everyone listening to this and everyone that's been here could grab onto one of the vines that are hanging in the forest we were just playing in.
It's a lot of analogies. The forest ping pong system that we have going, is it ping pong or did you say pinball? Pinball. We have a forest jungle theme pinball machine happening here. So let's park it there just before, the ball flings out of the machine, and I keep you up later than you want to be, but you actually did pretty good. You're not as delusional as you thought you were going to be by the ripe hour of 9:15. Is it now?
That's right. And I guess what I'm so excited to do,
rest and chill.
Transition away from the screen, because otherwise I would pick up my phone right now and go, because I'm stimulated. I need to talk myself into this transition, and then I'm going to rest.
Okay, here's a personal challenge for you.
Yes.
Read a book that's fiction.
I did bring a fiction book with me. I brought my self-development one, which is what I was thinking I was going to read. I'm going to start my fiction book tonight.
I've never read a self-development book in my life. I read my first mental health related book this past week, and I only did it because someone sent it to me to ask me to be on the same page as them. So I've never mixed my reading with my work, and I think that that's one of the most powerful things I've done in keeping that boundary line. I do not do a lot of research externally. Everything that I speak about comes from what I know from my education, what I personally did for myself, and I do not bring in other people's opinions, things that they say, the types of work that they do. Like everything is this world, because to me, there's no point. There's no point to expand more and more and more, because where does that end, right? We know what works. The science is there. We're good. We got this. It's all about the personal interactions that we have one-to-one with each other that actually makes magic happen. It's not about reading more, expanding more, knowing more, being better. It's like, no, that's not it for me.
It's a no.
It's a no.
No, I love it. I love
So,
it. But
read
tonight
fiction.
I will read my fiction.
Good. I'm looking forward to hearing what you're reading. And if you want a good read, I'll send one your way.
Okay.
Thanks for joining me. Thanks everyone for listening all the way through. If you are going to get all the way to this long, hard end. And I hopefully you were entertained, because that was definitely entertaining for me. We found flow state, and now we are both going to sign off and find some more chill within our day. All right. Peace, peace.